I play EverQuest 2 mainly. They're so hard to pick just one, but I have to go with the one that
We're offline. And we're back. So I guess let's reintroduce that real quick. Basically, we're diving into the lore, and we're gonna start off with why Yggdrasil likes lore first, and then we're gonna go into exactly what kind of changes are being made in EverQuest Next from the previous series. So if you want to go and take it off, Yggdrasil, it's all you.
Yeah. So my favorite, my number one favorite story in all of EverQuest 2 had to be the Ethernauts timeline, or everything they went through. Ever since Trakenon was killed, they released all this lore, all these prophecies by this old elven queen, and they put it out, all the stories online. They put out all this fantastic art. They really drummed it up awesome, and they did such a good job that when I got to the point of the actual signature quest in the Shadow Odyssey, where you got to meet them, I went really, my jaw literally dropped. I was like, holy crap, and they look just like how they're described, and just hit me with fanboy enthusiasm 100%. Going into EverQuest Next, they really have, they've really changed the game a lot. They went with doing a very few amount of gods comparatively to EverQuest 2 and EverQuest. And that could be because something behind the scenes in the Pantheon happened that split how they do their powers and things like that. Like, I'll give you a quick rundown right now of what I understand to be their Pantheon in EverQuest Next. It starts out with the big one that's followed by the Combine army, or Combine
Combine Accord?
Yeah, Combine Accord. So it's the Seraphs, and it's Anashti, and she's the Reaper. In EverQuest 2, she was the goddess of life originally. She was worshipped by elves known as the Soldal in the desert, and then she was banished for trying way too hard and creating undeath on Norath. So all the other gods banished her to the void. She's had to eke her way back, and now she's the goddess of undeath. So her being the Reaper in this thread, this universe, really does kind of pay a testament to that story in a way. Then there's Brel, who's known as the Builder. He's a crafter kind of god, and that makes a lot of sense in this one also, because in EverQuest 2 he was known as the kind of the economy kind of god, and he created a lot of different races. Then there's Erelisi, who almost doesn't make sense to me. She is the goddess of love in EverQuest 2, but it's like they merged her with Tuner, and now she's the goddess of nature and growth. Then there's Karana, god over the weather, storms, travelers. There's Luslin or Luclin and Drenal as a merged god, the god of prophecy and fate. In EverQuest 2, they are the gods of the different moons, and also Drenal is the Silver Reaper. He carries souls from existence to afterlife. Then there's Nathaniel. He's the god of war, honor, and duty, and that kind of pulls in the aspect of Relzek. In EverQuest 2, he was the god of war, and he was eventually, hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler, but eventually he was destroyed by Norathian adventurers. Then there's Salusek Ro. He was the god of fire, and a new one in the Seraphs is Talon, not Tanlin, Talon, and he's the trickster god, and he is the god of rogues and bards. Then we've got the Four. They're an ancient religion that was founded by the Kelder which we don't know much about at all. I don't know what they were, if they were elves or what at all. But there's four of them. Amaril, goddess of earth. Ignestus, god of fire. Or Onesha, god of air. and Prexus, god of water. Onesha would be like a direct correlation between Zegeni, and Prexus would be a direct correlation to what was Prexus and EQ2. There's two more, and I'll be done. There's Vishan, the mother of all dragons, and Norai. Norai is like the sphere of the earth kind of thing, like a whole avatar kind of thing going on, and those are worshipped by the Karens.
I like the lore changes personally. I think that the lore in the past is very complicated, and this kind of with the new game and a lot of new people hopefully coming into the series, less gods in the beginning is going to be a lot easier for them to get acclimated to the story and to the lore. And also, they're taking a more neutral approach with these gods. They haven't necessarily stated one as being evil or one as being good, but it's all very neutral descriptions so far. Now, we can get into that a little bit when we talk about the ebooks, but it almost reminds me of a Game of Thrones situation. You have your old gods and you have your new gods. They're both correlated essentially the same, but at the same time, it can create a lot of character diversity and a lot of class conflict because of which gods you may worship, vice versa. With these neutral gods, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can rely more on character narrative, personal narrative, and how the player goes about the story than necessarily stating, man, I need more coffee tonight or something. Necessarily stating that, oh, he's evil. If you worship this god, you're evil. It gives more player dynamics to the game. That's what I'm trying to say.
I definitely agree with you. And one of the things that they said at the lore panel was that the gods aren't necessarily good nor evil. They're definitely a gray area. They haven't been interacted with since I believe the Keldorain era in the history of this Norath. It's more upon the player and the NPCs portraying a story. The gods won't be very interactive at all, at least in the beginning, from what I understand. It's you take war as you would take any war. There's good and there's evil to every war. There are people who misuse it and there are people who abuse it, and then there are definitely political schemes behind it. War can bring peace or it can bring on more destruction, and you can fit that into almost every aspect of each one of the areas that each of these gods controls, each of their spheres of influence. Love can be a very nasty thing. You can end up heartbroken, or you can end up in the love of your life that brings your life forward and motivates you more than anything. And I think that allowing the character itself or the player themselves to pick which course of action they take and say, I'm doing this in honor of so-and-so god. Whether it be misuse or correct use is all up to the player and all up to the NPCs that they're doing quests for.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Anyone else want to add to that subject real quick before we move on?
I think there's one very important thing that needs to be pointed out. They're essentially letting go and rebooting the franchise, very similar to what Star Trek did in the last few movies. They're still using very similar and very recognizable aspects for the world, which is really appealing to diehard fans. And at the same time, they're retelling the story and giving themselves the room to expand on it. And especially in the world as I see it for EverQuest Next, we're going to need to have a starting point, and that starting point needs to evolve over time, because one of their things is a life of consequence, where the world is essentially changing and shaping under our own eyes. So I think, especially when we talk about the gods, I wouldn't be surprised if over time we would see more of them either being known of, or maybe some of them even being angry at what we've done. Certain things like that could really be quite interesting to see how they play out in EverQuest Next as well.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the engine they're building, man. The game, voxel water, voxel everything. We could have a real life avatar just pop down and smash everything to hell, and that excites me a lot.
Do you?
It really
That's
does.
so awesome.
Do you think avatars will have a place again in EverQuest Next?
I hope they don't.
I
Well,
don't think so.
Well, I
really
hope they're
don't.
rare.
it
Is what I
doesn't
should say.
it doesn't have to necessarily have to be a rate aspect. I think I love beating them. I love hunting for them, but I understand that it might be a very bad game design mechanic because it essentially locks out the majority of your player base out of content, which is never really a good idea, I guess.
Yeah, true, and plus MMOs capitalize on creating a player that feels powerful. You feel powerful in this world, you kind of want to go out and do things in this world. But when you have them killing gods, that might be overstepping the power level. And when you put the player on the level of the gods, what more is there really to do? If you're Conan the Barbarian, you've destroyed everything. What's left? And that's not very fun for a player either. So you can have these gods, you can have interactions with the gods. So at the same time, I think you still have to relegate to the player that they are sort of a humanoid. There has to be some kind of diversity, even though you can have a lot of advancement for a character. If they're humanoid, I don't know. Shouldn't be able to go to the plane of power and kill everybody else I want. It shouldn't happen that way. I don't think so, anyways. That's my opinion. Flatus, do you have any opinions on avatars?
There's only so many gods. You're gonna kill them all.
True.
Yeah, it's like if you start killing all the gods, if you just go out there and start, it kind of ruins the story, and we start to ask questions. I think that's one of the best things about lore is that when you start asking questions like, where did this come from? Why is this here? And what can I do to solve it? You try to find that out, and you find out that maybe it was from this evil god. It makes you anger. Like, I can see how you can get involved where it's like, I want to go kill that. Like, you would want to kill the disciples, and then if you go kill the god, then you lose that evil, or someone has to pick it up and take over. And it's rather even though no one have seen these gods, we may not see these gods. Who knows? I don't think killing gods is necessarily always the great way to go, but
I completely agree. Like, if you're going to take lore, I love how the ebooks are framing it. I love how they're framing it so far. Lore's based on sort of these characters who you could become. And Smedley gave that example years ago. What if the player becomes the raid boss? What if they get that super powerful spell and can become that powerful? I mean, I think that's where EverQuest Next is going to shine. It's in the openness that the game has. It's in the ability for players to really discern themselves from others and have their actions count. If I become super evil, why shouldn't players want to raid me? It depends on the level of interaction is what it really depends on. But it also depends on how you build the lore and how you build the narrative of the game.
I'm going to go grab 40 people and go kill chat.
Yeah, whatever. That can lead us into the ebooks, though. We have 2 ebooks out already. Basically, SOE has kind of a contract going with some fantasy writers. We might have an interview with one of them. Not going to say anything yet, but keep an eye out. Tamlin, you're back, I think.
I don't know about that.
Let's
Can you hear
test
me?
it.
Yep.
No.
Yes, we can.
Wait, yes, he is back.
He's back. Talon's
He's
here.
fixed it.
I
Tamlin
fixed
has arrived.
it?
Yes.
You want to know what I did? I sat here and did nothing.
Oh, well,
Sometimes
that's
the
going
best course of action.
I wiggled the wires a little bit.
Well, there we go. Congratulations. Welcome to the show. Would you like to present ECAST news before we go into any more lore stuff?
Sure. Before we get into the ebooks, first off, quick shout out, if it wasn't clear earlier, to Galantha, who is in the Twitch channel. That is my actual father. He has been playing role-playing games and MMOs just as long or longer than I have. He got into role-playing games before me, but MMOs, we got into them just about the same time. So thanks, Dad. So the news, again, that we are a community-focused podcast. We love bringing on guests like Yadrizzle, like Rec that we brought on last week. So if you're interested in being on the show, you can always send us an email at evercast.show@gmail.com and say, hey, I'd like to be on the show. We need you to have Skype, a webcam, and a microphone that works. That's it. Those are our requirements. And of course, have a passion about any of the EverQuest or SOE games and be wanting to talk about EverQuest Next. We're especially looking for our next episode to have on someone from onto the show that was at PAX, because our next show will be after PAX. We would love to get a first-hand account of how PAX went. The other bit of news, we got a lot of feedback about the art-driven show that we are doing right now, that we're going to get around to announcing the results of in our after hours segment. But we just thought that we would let you know that we have this awesome new idea that we're thinking about doing. And if you're familiar with the old role play by posts on message board forums, we've got a new take on that, and that is like an RP by tweet, where we'll start off a story with a hashtag, and let me get this, EC story, hashtag EC story, all one word, because that's the way hashtag works. And we're going to tell a story using 140 characters at a time or less. And next week on our after hour segment, we will see where that story takes us. We've got some rules to go along with it to facilitate it, and that is you cannot have 2 sequential posts in a row, one at a time, and then you have to wait for someone to reply. And other rule.
That's weird. Is Talon lagging for you guys too?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he just went down.
We
I
went
think
down
it is
again.
his internet though.
Yeah, I think it is internet.
I think it's
All right, well,
It's trying to come back. Hold on, give it a second.
nope.
I might be having some bandwidth issues. Oh, all right. We're live again, I think.
I am so sorry about the lagging. We never have any problems with this. Okay, so anyway, stick around for the after hour show, and we will talk more about the Twitter feed role play story that we're going to try and write. And now let's go talk about the ebooks.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're back. Can we
We're
get someone
back,
in chat
yes.
say yes? All right, perfect.
No. We're back.
Cool. So we have 2 ebooks out right now. We have The Last Stand of the Tear Doll, and then we have what they call The Fall of Bastion. And both stories, we're not going to give any spoilers or anything like that. I really want to, because I've read both, and they're so fantastic that I just want to be like, here's what happens. But I'll let you experience it on your own. Or maybe a month later, after it's been out for a while, we'll go back and revisit it. But there's a couple things about the way the ebooks are set up and the stories that they're telling that kind of give us a glimpse into the start of lore for this game and some cool stuff. We have basically the Combine Accord. They've been attacked by the Ring of Scale. They've been drawn back to this giant citadel called the Bastion, where they're all trying to recoup, and they're trying to get their strategy to get the hell out of there. So while they're developing their strategy to build boats and sail over to Canark, the Ring of Scale basically approaches on them. And the stories follow 2 different perspectives from characters that are intertwined in the same story. You have Karamor Thex, who I believe, Yggdrasil, he was very prominent in the EverQuest lore. Sort of, well, maybe not Karamor himself, but the Thex family is. The
Yes,
Thex
the Thex
family
family,
is
yeah.
huge. Thex and Devin, I believe, are 2 families of Dark Elves. Sorry, they're called Teardal. And it is cool because the books actually separate Teardal from Dark Elf in a way. Teardal is like the elven name for Dark Elf. Dark Elf is sort of the common tongue. But the way the books are set up, you sort of see this evolution in how the Teardal go from this elven elite warrior to who knows what could happen after that. Basically, both stories end pretty dark, I'll give you that. And they both sort of set up a way for old characters like Lannis to be brought back in, and a lot of twisting to be going on. We know that Dark Elves are related to dragons now, and it kind of sets up the story for that maybe too. What do you guys think about it so far? Have you guys read them yet?
I sadly did not have the time yet to
I-
actually go in and read them. So
I know Flatus has.
I did. Yeah, I did. I did read them. They're so good. I mean, the first book, it builds you up. Like, it kind of throws you in, and you're like, kind of like, all right, well, going back and watching the lore panel, and then catching up, kind of sets you where you start with the book, because it throws you right in. Like, it's not like, oh, all this has happened up to this point. It's more like, this is what's going on. It starts you right at the Age of Exile, which is that point in time in the timeline in the Combine era where they're getting ready to sail um, across the ocean and escape from the the dragon
The
Dragon
Dragon War.
scale.
the dragon yeah the dragon scale
Yeah.
army and that all this lore leads up to the Age of Heroes, which is where us as players come in. So it's kind of nice to read these stories that lead up to where we come in, and that means that hopefully what we'll see is when we start the game is these characters we've read about and they've introduced, we get in there and it's like, I know him, I know her.
Oh, w-
That is really cool. Yeah.
when you were reading the stories, did you take notes on like every time they mentioned a landmark or something like that?
Yep.
They
Like
mentioned spells. So I guess illusionist is confirmed as a class. All right, speculation based off the book. Illusionist is confirmed. Necromancer is confirmed.
Yep.
You have gnomes. You have ogres.
There
You
are ogres.
have Kara. You have dwarves.
Dwarves.
High elves are confirmed, which haven't been stated, but if it's in the lore book, I mean, you can't get rid of high elves. Let's be honest. So high elves are confirmed, and bards are confirmed.
Right. But so going back to the
According
story,
to us.
there's some significant landmarks that they mention in the story, like the last stand of the Tyrdal, and they mention how to find them. Is it anybody? Is that the first thing that somebody is going to do in game of us right
I'm
now?
definitely gonna go find Bastion.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was some cool stuff. There was like little things too, like little things you could pick up on. And I don't want like trying to stay as spoiler free as I can.
I know.
Karamor Thex's necklace, like that item, may be used for something, and that interests me. Like especially for what they've discussed. That would be an interesting tool. It's hard.
having a
It's
hard
so
time.
hard.
It is really hard. You have no
But,
idea how
It's
much.
I mean,
so hard
from-
to not.
From
Cannot.
someone who didn't read the lore yet, that is kind of interesting, right? That you're reading essentially these pieces of lore as like, wait, this could actually have an impact on the game they're making, because it has to be, because it's the new lore. So that could potentially reveal a lot about what they're doing. And that makes me really, really curious how many of these books are actually going to be doing. And on top of that, what other mediums they might start to use for that. I mean, I know a lot of games who've done like comic series and stuff like that, or actually tried to launch with comics. Didn't always go so well, but it was always an awesome piece for diehard fans
Age of
to
Conan
have.
did that, right?
At Age of Conan, Rift, Star Wars: The Old Republic tried to do it. I mean,
Warcraft did it.
yes, oh, obviously.
I didn't know that.
It's
EverQuest 2
just
did the lore a lot. They had several pages come out.
Mhm.
A lot of stories, especially the last update.
Yeah,
They did a written letter.
Yeah. Guild Wars 2 and I think Guild Wars 1 have both written novels that they've released along with their game.
So does lore matter to you guys?
Oh, definitely.
I think you're talking to the wrong crowd if you say no.
Maybe we're a little biased. Huh? We're all normal.
I'm definitely the guy on this panel that is probably less interested about lore than the rest, which is mostly because I've always played my games more for the games. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not into the lore and I don't read up to lore, but it does mean that when it comes to like the old school text wall of text quest lines, I've been known to skip the less important ones. No, the less
Yeah.
important ones.
No, I really think it's a good decision, and the way they're kind of dividing the market between EverQuest Next Landmark and EverQuest Next, they can really have two different experiences and play to all those different crowds. So they're able to do these books and more. And honestly, Guild Wars had books. I know my friend in chat right now, he goes by George Guy, he read the Guild Wars novels back in the day. And this gives players a way to get entrenched in the lore. It doesn't shove it down their throats. So people can experience the game they want to experience, but at the same time, it has the depth so far there that will keep us happy and other people happy, I think.
At the end of the day, lore does give you an extra motivator, an extra trigger in games, because you will go into a dungeon or an area for the first time, and suddenly you recognize ruins or a certain character. It is always that recognition that for me is the real motivation between knowing the world and knowing the characters in it.
That's
Yeah.
true, and basically that's what lore is. Like a lot of people, I think, when they discuss lore, and when I've been discussing
Well-
lore just tonight, it's sort of a nerdy thing, lore. But lore isn't that. Lore is the narrative that you're playing. It is the game.
Right.
Whether you are reading it or not, you're experiencing it.
Right. Well, and like they say that nature doesn't exist, abhors a vacuum or something like that. Is that a role-playing game or even a game? Right. You create this fictional world. It can't exist in a static environment. That environment has to be. If it was moving in a direction, then once you start playing that game, it's only natural for that whatever is happening in that story to keep moving. It doesn't just stay in one spot. It has to keep moving. And so like the lore that they tell about the game is that showing that movement of the story through time, because like you just can't have it staying still. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have it stand still, but then like, when somebody, is leveling an alt or comes back to a place 2 or 3 years later, and it's the exact same point, you lose that replayability. It's like, I've been here before. I know what's going on. This is kind of lame now. I've done it. I've seen it.
And that's the problem with MMOs in the past, and that's the problem that EverQuest Next apparently wants to fix. I mean, rallying calls, that's new ways to introduce lore and move the story ahead, and it's permanent change in the world. So, I mean, I played Rift, I played EverQuest 2, and, I mean, EverQuest 2, they have what they call the Ages in Prophecy, man. That came out in 2004. The Ages in Prophecy has been going since 2004. They've never concluded the story. They're just now getting to it after all these years. So you play through the
Finally.
segments, and as you level up, you learn the story. But you're right, as you level up new characters, the world doesn't change, just the parts of the world change. EverQuest Next, hopefully the whole world will really change. So I think lore will be even more important then, because players will just be engaged with the lore. Who cares about lore when it's a set story, but when it changes the world around you and you're the one impacting the lore, I think you're going to be more like enraptured in it. I don't know.
I was gonna say,
Enwrapped in it.
can you imagine how deep of an involvement all of us as players will have if we affect the world, and it forces SOE, the lore writers, to say, all right, well, they went and did it, so we're gonna have to write it in. Like, imagine that. Imagine how we could make people rise to be kings, and then take them over and have them fall. Who's to say, where does that stop? And that's kind of cool to me.
And players too. I mean, if players have guilds and
absolutely.
factions that can build cities and create empires, I mean, they said it's the biggest sandbox. Well, real quick, yes or no? Will you agree that what we've seen so far is the biggest sandbox?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
No.
Mixed.
No,
Yeah, I'd
It's
say
mixed.
No. It's mixed.
So
Hearthstone
far-
really sandboxy. But other
I would say that Eve is bigger, and
look at ArcAge. Look at all the different things you can do in
I was gonna say, because
diplomacy, all this stuff. I don't know if it's because they haven't announced it yet. It's a big thing that maybe they're just holding it for a later reveal.
Yeah, because they haven't revealed. Sorry, Cal. I was gonna say they haven't revealed everything yet. Where ArcAge has revealed a lot of stuff.
They're working on. I'm pretty sure that like Dave is probably smiling right now and saying like, "You guys don't even know."
Yeah,
But
well, see, I think it is.
I mean,
it's a marketing thing. Like they're still in a black box. I don't care what they say.
But that does. At this point, I would say no. At this point, I would say
You
Star
cut
Wars
out.
Galaxy's Eve.
Go ahead and repeat
Panic
that, Robin. Robin, you totally
Yeah,
cut out there.
At this point, I would say no, because games like Star Wars Galaxy's Eve and old school type of MMOs had much more sandbox elements. That being said, never before did actually a game give us an actual sandbox where we can actually build stuff to this degree. So in that regard, it's probably a more real sandbox than anything.
True.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
It relies less on
true.
mechanics.
Well, right, Eve is a large sandbox, but it's so easy to make that game big. You just throw on another star and put a warp gate there, and bam, new places to go. It's bigger now. So like that's why I kind of made the face, like, is EverQuest Next going to be the biggest or not? the biggest sandbox? Because Eve, I'd say, is the biggest, but is it the most detailed? Is it the most, does it have the most depth to it? No, absolutely not.
Depth. 3 levels in every place. Everywhere you go in this world, you can go underground and experience new things. So they're
Right.
making 3 worlds. They essentially said that. I think the exploration is going to be the biggest sandbox. I think the creation is going to be the biggest sandbox. But so far, what we've announced, or what's been announced for like player interactions, are pretty limited. They've shown us how we can affect the world, but it doesn't show how we can affect each other so much yet. So that'll be interesting to see what plays out. I'd love a diplomacy system. I'd love like PvP where I can go out in the frontier and claim land and own that land. I mean, the only problem is how do you do that without instancing it? But I guess that's for another show.
Oh, that's a
Well,
question.
I think
gonna
that
say-
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick. I mean, we know they've mentioned how the rally calls work. Let's say if there's a gigantic guild that says, "Wait, guys, let's not help build that city. Hold everyone else back." You could essentially affect the server that way and affect everybody else in the story.
I'm doubtful if it will actually be as dynamic as that. Because, I mean, when they talk about a life of consequence, I guess that means options, right, for a lot of people. But I also want to point out that that might very well be that we are a little bit more on rails than that, and we're actually progressing the story by our actions instead, which is maybe a little bit less cool. But it is definitely from SUE's point of view, it's easier to maintain, because when we are doing the rally call, that doesn't necessarily mean that they already have to plan for the next one or basically have to take our input for the next one. Because if they really go that approach, what you realistically end up with is something that Defiance tried to do with their TV show and game, is where like you're constantly already going back and forward between your next offense and previous offense, and that does put a lot of strain on your development team. So that makes me wonder if it isn't more on Rails than just like rally call, next rally call, and like a bunch of different stages but inside the rally call. But because that is really the interesting part for me.
Yeah.
Would you guys think that that is an issue for EQ Next? Would you be disappointed if it really is that way?
I wouldn't be disappointed.
Well,
Cameron's thinking.
I think that the story is that the rally call, it's a one direction rally call. It's got a starting point. It has where they want it to end, and then there are the different steps to go through it. But I think that that's just there if you want to do that. I think that there's plenty of opportunities outside of that for them to do what they had said that they were going to do. That we're not going to say that this is where the orcs spawn, and then if you kill them all off in 15 minutes, they'll spawn more. There's plenty of opportunities for them to say, like, hey, this is where we're going to put some orcs, and this is what they like, and this is what they don't like, and we don't even know what they're going to do. Like, they have their own behavior coded in them, but after that, it's free.
Yeah.
And I think that they've made it kind of clear that they know how to do that. In that case, it gets away from that rally call rail going one direction, and now you have this dynamic sandbox where you can interact with those orcs and make them do one thing just by them reacting to their behavior. Or alternately, they can act in a different way on a different server just based on those players on that server knowing how or interacting with the orc's behavior in a different way.
Yeah, instead of players negatively impacting it, the NPCs can negatively impact it in different ways to create a unique experience every time. And I love the thing where they said, oh, well, maybe we'll have you go destroy the town that you just created, or maybe we'll have dragons come destroy it. So even though they might still be guiding the meta story, the meta narrative, they can do so where it can throw us for loops all the time. They can create that loving character and they can kill them off because they're not restrained to crazy development time like they were before. This is like, oh, let's create this one thing, set up the parameters, and just watch it go. Because they're basically making a simulation. They're setting a variable in the simulation and letting it take its course from there. So,
would you call that choose your own adventure MMO gaming? Kind of like, do you remember those choose your own adventure books from like middle school where it's like pick chapter pick page 57 or page 67. You pick the wrong page, you die, but you pick the right page, you keep going. and there's different endings. It may not end, but there's different ways to get to the final outcome.
I
Yeah,
hated
whatever
those.
road you
That's so
choose.
true.
I
Well,
hated those because I always ended up having the worst ending. I always ended up, I died or my entire party died. I'm a lot like Felicia Day. I won't touch them anymore.
Yeah, I died a lot in those too, but it's true. So they can change this meta narrative, but of course you still have your personal story and your experience that you go through in the game. I think Dave just said in chat that Drizzle just linked. He said, imagine that you're a musketeer in the middle of a war. Your adventures are unique as a major landscape plotline goes on behind you, but your adventures are formed by the major events happening around you. So even though these giant events are happening, even though these rallying calls are happening,
right.
your personal experience is going to change in the game constantly too, based on those big things that are happening.
Right,
It's
so-
going to be cool. Can we play this game yet?
Yeah, right. So what they instead of and World of Warcraft just announced their big patch, right? And it's going to be an assault on one of the major cities, and it's going to be a raid, right? And this is how they're advancing their story. But your interaction with that story is you either participate in the raid and do the various tiny quests around that raid, or you don't. And if you choose not to, you pretty much miss it because you have to do the raid to see it. And I think that EverQuest Next allows us to see the story progress without being put into this narrow, the theme park in this ride. You get in the ride and you ride the ride, and then when the ride's over, you're out. So like if EverQuest Next has this big story that they're developing, like a major assault on this city, they know that that's what's going on, and the players can see it and they can interact with it, but they don't have to get boxed into riding the ride to see it. They can experience it the way they want to.
That's true. That's completely true. That's going to be a
Yeah.
unique experience.
I mean, we know that there's going to be certain. We can even say how lore affects classes because we know there's going to be classes that if you're going to be a paladin, you're going to want to do good. But if you want to be a shadow knight, you're going to have to do
Maybe.
bad.
I still think that's iffy. They haven't said anything about that,
But
and
what stops
I don't know.
me from running up to a farm that's on fire and I can say I'm going to put out the fire, or I'm going to be like I'm going to kill people. I'm just going to kill people that are running around on fire, put them out of their misery.
I mean, that would be pretty epic.
And then people are like, and then it's like, "Well, that dude's a jerk." But that's one way of handling it. People are gonna want to be bad. There's,
Yeah.
And they should be allowed to be bad as long as there's a check to it. As long as
Oh, of
a
course.
good player like me can go kick his ass, why not?
it's fine. I think that there should be trials. Like if I'm super good, it should be me killing innocents to get to evil, and for me to be evil to climb up to being good, it's gonna take a lot of work to get there. And I think that's how things should be, because you can become good and evil now. If I'm correct,
Yeah.
you can become good and evil now. So what,
That's
it's just
true. It'll be cool
how
to see how
how they
Tesla
handle
does.
it should be interesting.
And we're gonna have to we were going to talk about the cinematic wars, which was a debate that we had on Twitter a little while back of whether we should rely on cinematics, whether we should rely on in-game questing to deliver a story, and the best methods. But I think we've already summed that up, what we sort of want to see. And we've summed up that these dynamic AI interactions and this dynamic simulation that they're building for us to play in, it changes the game. So I'm not sure it's really relevant for us to talk about anymore. And we're kind of getting low on time for our main show. But I would like to bring up I'd like to bring up the round table, but let's move on to the round table. We've covered a lot of lore and we've covered a lot of story experiences, but let's move on, and we'll have to revisit this later.
No. The first question in the round table addresses exactly what we were just talking about,
that's true.
And because what the question asks is, how do you feel about modern concepts like guns and ninjas in EverQuest Next in Norath? And that basically it speaks to the story, to the lore that they're telling. Do you have this preconceived notion of what Norath and EverQuest is, and how would you feel, about them introducing something that is new, or different, or modern, or whatever?
I'll be the first one to jump in there. I know a lot of people were saying that they should have been two separate questions. But I don't think they understood the question. So a lot of people were like, well, they should ask us if we want guns or we should want ninjas. But they weren't asking if you wanted guns or ninjas. I think they gave examples. What they wanted to know is if you wanted modern concepts.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people just saw guns and ninjas and voted on no. instead of thinking like, oh wait, we could have like think about siege weapons like cannons and stuff like that. That changes the game. Like I was thinking like crazy modern like early guns like Dave said, a musketeer. I would love to see somebody with a musketoon like
Maybe he
riding out.
confirmed that a little bit when he said musketeer. Maybe he
Well,
let something slip. I don't know.
I and that's what, like, when they're talking about changing the genre, okay, the MMO genre is kind of stale at this point in time, but if you think the MMO genre is pretty stale, the fantasy genre in general,
Yeah.
like everything, is even more stale. Like, if you've been around reading Lord of the Rings, it's high, they call it high fantasy, and I am ready for anything new that is a jump away from that typical fantasy. And I tweeted about it, and I said that we're talking like Indian fantasy, and I'm not talking Native American fantasy. I'm talking about from India, Chinese fantasy, African fantasy. Let's take the fantasy and find something new. And I know I'm kind of, I might be in the minority, but I'm ready for anything new.
I am
No,
too.
I don't think at all that you're in the minority, because I had the same thought a couple days ago. I didn't even see your tweet. I really think that they need to involve more cultural diversity in it, because they bring a lot of it kind of like sword and spell kind of thing from Dungeons and Dragons, but it doesn't go outside of that too much. They bring in a little bit of the what's it called, steampunk kind of thing. They bring in that kind of theme, but outside of that, it really needs more. It does. It needs more influence from different cultures to diversify it, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you go back to the painting and the armor sets that they're coming out with, armor sets are based on armor families, and they all have like a heritage root to them. So we could see dark elves, and we could see
Right.
Kara, and they're setting up the gods that way too. The Kara, they worship these primal gods there because they're primal creatures. So it sets up like a whole nother level of dynamics for the different races to play their parts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd love to see modern concepts.
I know.
Did you guys remember? Sorry, do you remember when Guild Wars 2 did their first April Fool's thing for Guild Wars 2, and they came out with the Commando class? That was the class I wanted to play in Guild Wars 2. I was so disappointed that really wasn't. It killed it for me. I didn't enjoy the game because I couldn't be a commander.
Well, and again, I
You can make it go with the lore.
Vanguard being my first MMO, I think that was like one of the first times that I had seen them try to do something new, where they're bringing in, there's a whole zone continent that is Kojin, and that is Asian themed, and then there is Kalia, which is Middle Eastern themed, and then there's Thestra, which is your traditional European one. And I think that what I really want to see in EverQuest Next is that if there is that this story that they want to tell, that all the pieces of the story fit together. So if there's got to be ninjas, I don't care, but make it fit, make it work in that setting. Other than that, it's like I don't really have any preconceived demands on what they need to do.
Just make it fun. Make it fun. Give me ways to have fun and make a combat system that's fun, make an adventure system that's fun, and I'm gonna enjoy it. Like,
Hey, okay, Calvary, you're the only one that hasn't weighed in so far. What do you have to say?
I say if you would ask me that question like 5 or 6 years ago, then it would come down to I would rather not see guns in my fantasy games. I'm kind of over it. I don't really mind anymore as long as it fits in the universe and they make it work. I don't really mind that much anymore. For example, to give you an example, I would hate automatic weapons still, or like lasers or robots, like actual. For example, to bring the example of Vanguard, them bringing in the
Oh,
Autobots, that definitely didn't fit
yeah,
what it
you're
was.
you're right. You're right. The
But
first time I saw the gnome robots, I was like, "What? What's this?"
but everything besides that, like say you have like a magical whoa, okay, hello, let's like try that again. Magical stick with like lasers, magical missiles coming out, or say old gunpowder weapons and stuff like that. I'm not that against it. I don't really care either way though. I mean, for example, I've always like wondered why do we not have like harpoons or like we have crossbows, we have longbows, we have short bows. But how cool would it be if you can like shoot a spear out of I don't know, some homemade barrel?
And do like Scorpion, get over here.
Well, that would be putting it to the next level.
Yeah.
I'd be cool with that. That would be fun.
All right.
What's the second round table?
The next round table question is: should friends list be account based or character based? And I know Flatus has an opinion on this because we were tweeting back and forth about this too.
Yeah. Give me an offline mode. Just say, because there's some days where you just come home from work and it's not that you don't want to hang out with your friends and play games with them, but sometimes you just need to unwind for that first like 5 or 10 minutes, and you're just like, I just want to go and craft for like 10 minutes, just me with my headset on and get my music or whatever, and just sit there and make a couple weapons or get some stuff out of the way. You just want to just chill out before you have to deal with more people after your day.
Why wouldn't you just like hop on, type in guild chat, hey guys, I'm just on for a little bit, I'm doing some stuff, and then just do your stuff. I mean,
Maybe I'm coming from a former guild leader's point of view.
Oh, that's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Guild leaders are not supposed to be offline. You know this. Come on.
Well, so as I mentioned beforehand, that my father is in channel, and we have played MMOs together, and so all I ask is that I be able to have different settings for different people. Like if I log on and I just don't want to really interact with people, allow me to be like a pure offline, except for this exclusion and this exclusion. My wife plays MMOs, I don't. She's gonna know whether or not I'm playing, so allow me to interact with her through the game. My parents, whatever. And then like for other people, they might have different tiers of friends with people. There's like their real life friends that they play with. So allow them to be like, hey, I want everybody to think I'm offline except for these people. And I think that would be awesome. And one last thing that was brought up in IRC, and that is that if you're going to ignore someone, have the option to ignore the account and not just the person. Because when people ignore someone, I've seen it before where, hey, this person is griefing me, giving me a bad time. I ignore them. All they have to do is log out, log on to another character, and they just start back up again. So please, Sony, listen, and this is something that people are asking for.
Absolutely. I would love an ignore account feature, because there are people out there that just want to give other people a bad time. And I'm not down for that.
There are definitely people in the community that it can change like the most basic chat, like the 1 through 9 chat on a PvP server can be so toxic.
Yeah, no, that's true. So that's the only reason I have any opinion on this is the whole blocking on account based. They said you shouldn't need to roll an alt in EverQuest Next, so why does it really matter if it's character versus account based? But honestly, it should be account based, and give us some Steam options. If you're building all this social infrastructure into EverQuest Next Landmark, which they say they're building into, make it so we can just have our friends list, so we can set away statuses, whatever. And I mean, if it works on Facebook, works on Steam, just put it into EverQuest Next.
That's another thing, like especially that we know that Sony has already released games that are cross-platform. Like if you could make a cross-game and cross-platform, like my friend is playing PlanetSide 2 on his PS3, and there is this cool event that's going on right now in EverQuest Next. Can I send him a message and be like, hey dude, you need to log on?
That would be cool. Yeah, why not just make a Sony hub? Where they have the potential to do it. I know EverQuest 2, you were able to join other servers' chats and stuff like that. So why not make it a cross-game sort of... They have Station Launcher connected to that.
I mean, back in Vanguard, you can still do that. You can still send cross-server tells to other people. And if I'm not mistaken, that even worked to EverQuest 2 to a degree, or that was something that they were working on. Because I remember that we were really excited being able to talk to our
you can connect to
EverQuest 2
IRC chat in EverQuest 2.
In Vanguard,
but
in Vanguard it doesn't matter because there's only one server now.
Well, I guess that's true. No, but EverQuest 2 allows you to connect to an IRC chat, I believe. I think it's not easy to do, but I believe it's there to where you can have a chat channel that's connected to IRC.
Mhm.
So it's possible. They just have to put the infrastructure in. Let's see. Is that it for the roundtable?
That's
Yep.
it.
That's
All
it.
right, we're gonna turn it over to Flatus for our conclusion, guys.
Yep. Well, guys, our audio cast usually shows up at ogrshows.com in podcast format. So you can go there, get the audio format of the episode you listen to. It'll be out in a few days. And you can download our previous 2 episodes, episode 1 and episode 2. Our next show will be on September 8th, the second Sunday in September. We'll be discussing the PAX info. If anyone out there is going to PAX and you would like to be a part of the show and you want to maybe get some info for us at PAX, or if you get a chance to sit and listen to one of the live shows and you want to come and be a part of us, email us at evercast.show@gmail.com. Big thanks to Drizzle for joining us. And don't forget, our after hours is jam packed with Ornex and some music. And we'll also be announcing the winners to our art contest. And remember, guys, lore, as much as you don't think it affects you in the game, it always does. So lore is super important, and this will probably be one of many lore episodes we have. So we'll see you guys in a minute.